Ahsoka. I will bring out your moderator, Eric Goldman, to introduce the cast members of Ahsoka. Come on out here, Eric Goldman.
Thank you very much for that. I wish I had you introducing me everywhere. Guys, I'm very excited. I'm Eric Goldman, managing editor, and I'm very excited to be here with the cast members from Ahsoka. I know you guys want to talk to them, so let's get them out here now. She plays Sabine Wren, Natasha Luba. He plays Ezra Bridger, Iman Esfandi. Well, we'll get out here in a second. Come on out, guys. Natasha, Iman. She plays Shin Hati Iman Sato, and she plays Morgan Elsbeth, Diana Lee Eno Santo. It's a So I'm going to start out this panel being a little meta, guys, because Star Wars, when you join a Star Wars project, you gotta keep secrets, obviously. And even before it launches, you have to be careful what you say. And then the show premieres, and the strike was going on for very good reasons, but you still couldn't talk about it. So what's it like to finally be able to acknowledge everything that happens to your characters in the series, and in one case, that you're in the series, Ahsoka?
Thank you guys so much for coming. The strike was really painful not to get to be able to interact, but the positive side of it was that I feel like the show got to exist by itself without commentary, and the story got to kind of stand on its own. So I tried to take that positive, but I really wished I could interact and respond, and it was really painful not to be able to. So finally I can say thank you so much for watching the show.
I will echo the same thing. Hello, everybody. It is nice to be here. It's nice to say anything about the show. I was watching at home and really, really wanting to just say that I'm Jabba. Just say that I'm the new Jabba the Hutt.
Huge twist.
Huge twist. So it's an honor to be here. Thank y'all. We wouldn't be here without y'all. So thank you.
Hi everyone. It's so meaningful to be here with you because the last time we got to interact with you, I think was Star Wars Celebration in London. Yeah, and just to now see you, and after Shin and Balin has gotten to be in the world, it's just so meaningful, and getting to see you interact with you, it just means the world. It's so cool. So thank you so much for having us.
All I can say is I love you fans. You guys are amazing, and we appreciate all the love and support, and I'm so grateful to you. I really am. So you guys know how to bring the joy. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that finally Iman can be with us, our Star Wars family, together here. So
Natasha, I know you talked about how you watched all Rebels beforehand. You knew the backstory. There was this huge reveal about your character that kind of threw all the fans too about the apprenticeship under Ahsoka. What was your reaction finding out sort of that this was a curveball Dave was throwing you as far as something huge that happened in her past?
Yeah, I mean, I was learning about the character's background as the show was happening too, because there was all these little breadcrumbs that were left by other characters saying things, and I mean, it's, Sabine makes a lot of bad decisions in the show. I think we can all agree. But I really just loved her journey because it's not perfect, and I think that her story makes her more interesting because there's moments where it's really hard to love her, and that's really interesting to me. So I loved playing her for that reason.
I think a lot of people do love Sabine though. Iman, what was your sort of prep like? If you hadn't seen Rebels, there's certainly a lot of research you could do on your character. So was there sort of that immersion you were doing as well?
I admittedly, which if you would have found this out prior, you might have taken my head off, but maybe now you don't think that. I didn't watch all of Rebels. I didn't want to get too caught up in the younger version of Ezra. I felt very connected to an older version, the way he was written. And I watched the episodes where he had scenes very intimately with like Sabine and the Spectre crew and Ahsoka in particular. And just to understand that dynamic, obviously the hologram, the final message. And also my TikTok became flooded with the scene, rest in peace Kanan. So I was like inundated with a lot of it, but I didn't watch it until after the show, because Dave and everyone else who was directing me were so like reaffirming, like, no, that's Ezra. Oh, that's also so Ezra. And we'd be backstage like, that's so Ezra of you. And I was like, okay, so then I think we're good. Like, I'll watch it later. So I didn't actually do the immersion thing until all the way after shooting.
That's so Ezra would be a good spin-off, by the way. Ivana, I found your character so fascinating to me, her and Baylan, because we've seen Jedi, and we've seen Sith, and even Ahsoka, who left the Jedi, still obviously kind of, she's like the best of the Jedi. But then we have your character, who's something different, something new. You know, she's a mercenary, she's a bad guy, but she's not a like the level of Sith evil. So was that kind of interesting for you to figure out how evil, how bad do I play this? Because this is this new dynamic for a character, of course.
Totally, yeah. I think it had a lot to do with getting to know Dave and his understanding of what that area of Rey is, and we got to know Baylan and Shin together with Rey from scratch, sort of. So we got to create them from the very beginning, and I owe so much of what Shin is to Dave, to Rey and his presence on screen, their relationship, and that Rey area. You know, it's not absolute, so it's more or less about your relation to the light and how far away you are from the dark, or vice versa with Shin. And I really think that towards the end, because we kind of see her be a little bit more towards the dark, then kind of meeting Sabine, meeting Ahsoka, and beginning to question, beginning to ask herself questions that she necessarily didn't ask before. So I think that actually by the end of the first season, she truly was left in that gray area by herself, because before that it was, you know, Baylan's approval was her reward all along, and she's now beginning to carve out her path. So I think it's just surrendering to whatever comes along in the journey, and just understanding that it's not absolute, and allowing that to happen.
And then, Diana, you had this interesting in here as far as you were on this great episode of The Mandalorian that ended up kind of being a backdoor pilot for Ahsoka. How much, you know, at the time, because obviously Thrawn gets name dropped in that episode, but, you know, Dave, I don't know, how much was being kept close to the vest? Were you given any kernels of what was to come, or what her full sort of deal was?
You mean back when I was doing Mandalorian?
Yeah.
No, I didn't even know that Ahsoka was even a possibility. I honestly didn't know. In fact, I didn't even know my name was Morgan Elsbeth until the night the Jedi episode appeared on Mandalorian, you know, season 2, episode 5. I was just stunned. Like, I got a name. I just knew I was the Magistrate. So, and I know everybody was like, oh, look, Grogu's named Grogu, but I had no idea that Morgan, it had to be Morgan until Rosario said the character's name. So that gives you an idea of the kind of secrecy that they keep, you know. So yeah, I wasn't privy to it. And then when I found out that I was going to be possibly considered for Ahsoka, ironically, I was at Disneyland with my family when I got the call from my manager, and I just literally like screamed and cried in the middle of Disneyland. So yeah, it was kind of crazy how that happened, but I tell you, it was beautiful, because when it felt real for me that Ahsoka was happening is when we had our first Zoom table read, and then that beautiful chemistry that we were building in real time on Zoom. I loved it, so I was so happy.
This is a question for any of you to jump in on, because all of you either wielded a lightsaber or fought against a lightsaber. You were in a lightsaber fight even if you weren't holding a lightsaber. And I'm just curious, what was the training process for that like in general? And my second part of this question is, I remember Ewan McGregor famously saying on the prequels, him and Liam Neeson couldn't stop making lightsaber humming noises, and I'd be chastised and told to stop doing that. And did you have that problem as well?
Okay, so repeat the question.
Oh, what was the training process for the lightsaber fight like, and it should make the noise on set? Or
Oh
were you-
man, oh okay, so yeah, there was a lot of noise making on set, especially like coming from Ray. Like he would just always go kind of boom, boom, boom. You know, so you can't really help yourself. It was great. I think especially getting to work with Natasha quite a bit. It was just a lot of training. We got to know one another from training and getting to know Ming as well, being led by her. There's a lot that comes along with getting to know your lightsaber. I think it has to do with, like, it's a meditative process as well, and showing up for yourself in a physical way that I don't think I've experienced before. But yeah, a lot of noises were made, and maybe still are made to this day.
Going on with the territory.
It was interesting for you, Natasha, because like she has to not be great at lightsaber fighting initially. So was that sort of a different process for you to be like the not as good at lightsaber fighting?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I do have like some background in martial arts, and then I also have some experience with like a katana sword from another film. So I sort of started from scratch in a way, because the way that we fight is very samurai, which was like a very different stance, a very different form. So I felt like a beginner, and the fact that Sabine is not very good just meant that I had a lot of like falling over to do and a lot of like reactions, and I was saying to Ivana, like, I'm so not jealous of her because I'm like happy that I'm the one that gets to be the bad one, the one that sucks at lightsaber.
Iman, it's funny when at first when he kind of turns down the lightsaber, you're like, oh, is he not going to use a lightsaber? So did you have that question too? You're like, do I get to use a lightsaber or not? What's the deal?
So luckily, when they told me I got the role, I just assumed I was going to get to do everything. Sure. I was like, oh, I'm going to do it all. Not actually sure, but like in my head, I was like, I hope to do everything. And then I actually shot my lightsaber stuff first.
Oh.
So I knew I was going to use it. And I did not make the sounds, but because I've seen the interviews of everyone who made the sound so much, I was like, I'm gonna be cool, I'm not gonna make the sound. And then, if you've seen the show, there's the episode where I don't use a saber, but I do pick up a blaster, and first take of that, nail it. I mean, practical effects, people are flying away, you know, like, it's so cool. And right away, I'm like, God, that was really good. And they're like, we're gonna do it again. I'm like, oh, what for? Sound, camera, whatever. They're like, you were making the blaster sound. Oh my God, I wasn't prepared not to make the blaster sound, because then they showed me, they were like, pew, 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 pew. I was like, imagine the intensity of that scene, but I'm like, pew, 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 pew.
Actually, like, one of the reasons for that is because there's no like recoil
No
with
recoil.
weapons in Star Wars. So instead of like if you were pretending and there's no pushback. So you often make sounds because you almost need to tell yourself when you're shooting.
Just shot.
Because
Just shot.
yeah, so I was doing that too. Anyway.
So I made blaster sounds, but not saber sounds. Yeah.
Diana, on both Mandalorian and this show, yeah, you're in these big fight scenes where you have very cool weapons against lightsabers. I know obviously you have a big martial arts background. I'm curious though with like lightsabers, like what was the technique they were teaching you to do the fight scenes in this? And was it brand new stuff, or was it kind of incorporating things you've done in the past?
Well, I have to give kudos for Ahsoka, Ming Q, who was our fight choreographer. She is amazing. She was the one that was really the backbone behind all the fight scenes for Ahsoka specifically. And you know, my younger years, I used to be a stunt woman, and before that, you know, through my father, Dan Elizondo, I luckily was always introduced to many different martial arts styles and systems. So it was interesting. So like Mandalorian, I could kind of pull in my Filipino martial arts roots, my Thai boxing roots, and all that. But it was great working with me because it was really, I had to channel my wushu roots, you know, and it was good. And she created completely this amazing system for the Talzin blade to go up against the lightsaber. You know, that whole thing of putting my hand on the blade as the fires go, I mean, that's me, Q, bringing, you know, inventing that. And I just thought that was just brilliant, so unique. And as far as making sounds, I mean, like with the Beskar spear was more like ching, 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 you know, when I was doing that. And then, you know, with the Talzin blade, I I was like, whoosh, whoosh. That's all I could think of in my mind. That was it. Those are my sound effects. So.
Shout out Mean Q. Shout out Mean Q.
Yeah, me too.
She should be here. Go
Yeah.
see her.
And
She's the reason we played well.
Yeah, and our stunt team. You know, our doubles. Our doubles. Yes, yeah. So we're loving them.
Natasha and Iman, you know, there's obviously the scene when these two characters are finally reunited after so long. I love that scene, and I loved how there is this sort of tentative nature to it. And I know some people thought, oh, they should have like run to each other and hug, but I like that it was like a little awkward. Did you guys discuss, how do we play this? This is obviously a huge deal in Star Wars lore, but also these characters, how would they react to each other?
It was funny because on the day we sort of discussed it and we were like, what does feel right? Like it's almost like such an epic moment you want to like cry and run to the person, but then at the end of the day you just have to do what's comes out naturally as Sabine and Ezra, and they're just old friends who would be like, hey, I casually gave up the galaxy to find you, but hey, like,
Me, no
you know,
questions
no big deal.
asked. Just, what's up, dude? Thanks for finding me. You know? It was very organic.
It was very like Star Wars in that casual nature of something that should be so much more serious, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That was great. And then Diana and Ivana, your characters, it was such an interesting thing where it's like, along with Rey's character, the three are working together, but it's not like they're all on the same, like, agenda or belief system. And there's definitely some tension with your two characters. Is there any sort of underlying respect there, or is it just like, we're working together because we have to work together, and we'll just see this job through?
It's so interesting because we had a saying, the bond of the baddies. And so we were very close on set. So it's interesting actually how the editing was. I was actually more fascinated by the editing choices, But I think for me, I just felt like my character had a job to do, and she was going to fall in order, and Balin was my right-hand man, and she was there to get do what she had to do. But it's kind of funny because behind the scenes we were just so close. So it is interesting how it came to be on the screen.
Yeah, with all that being said, and with all the deep love that I have for you and our bond of buddies, speaking from the Sheen side, there's something fishy about Morgan. It's just, she has a bit of beef with the witches, I think. I think because it's quite unknown for Shin who Morgan is and her intention, for lack of a better term, there's something like unorthodox in Morgan and how she chooses to interact with the Force. So I think, if anything, it's just Morgan is unfamiliar for Shin, and she doesn't quite know how to understand her.
I think that's a great way to put it. There's even for me, I'm seeing like there really is the way they're putting this a lot of mystery behind Morgan. But I do love the scene, like witch, and I'm like, I just love the way that came out.
I think it has to do with whatever story Balin has told Shin. Because I think the knowledge that she carries regarding witches is what Balin has, the knowledge that Balin has shared with her. So,
So this is another question for anyone to jump in on, because I've had the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Dave Filoni several times, going back to the Clone Wars days, and he doesn't take a lot to get him talking about like the deep Star Wars lore. He's a little busier these days, but I am curious if you had like a question for him, if you're like asking some little details, did it ever turn into some of those like, we're getting some deep dives here? Natasha, it seems like.
Of course it did. Every day it did.
I looked to Tash because when I first came on the set, they had been shooting for a while.
Yeah.
And she was like, has Dave come up and hung out with you yet? I go, oh yeah, like every once a little bit. She goes, did he do the thing? I'm like, what thing? He's like, did he, go straight into an hour of Star Wars with me? I was like, for sure, that's Dave's thing, Like you just sort of sit there and soak it up and you're like, all right, Dave, didn't know half of that. Thank you, Dave.
Walking encyclopedia.
And then he just floats away, makes some joke and he just floats away. You're
Like levitates to the next set.
does it again somewhere else.
Bye, Dave.
Does it again somewhere else.
Doesn't miss a beat at all.
if he came in and quizzed you, would you be able to retain everything that he asked you about?
Honestly, yeah, I think I could.
I have like terrible memories. I think I'll need to watch everything every year if I'm to keep up with everything. So, yeah.
Do that on Disney Plus, everyone. Iman, Ezra, it's rampant speculation because I know, you guys don't know what the future holds. But Ezra can confirm sort of all the fears about Thrawn. We saw these glimpses of what was happening in the New Republic and this debate, is this even something real? So I gotta listen to the dude, right? Do you think?
You mean when I get back?
Yeah.
Or now that I'm back?
Yeah, now that it's back.
Shoot, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. They don't tell me much about what's coming up. Maybe as a safety precaution. I don't know. But I can't say what's coming up, but I hope they'll listen to whatever I say and at least take in the imposing threat of it and take that seriously. Yeah.
And then Diana, there was this huge sort of reveal on your character being a Night Sister. And speaking of Dave and lore, so was that something that you kind of got a big lesson on? And because that kind of goes it goes to the Clone Wars, but it goes even further back. Did you find out everything about the Night Sisters pretty quickly?
Actually, I knew that I was a Night Sister going all the way back to Mandalorian.
Okay.
I did know.
So that one he did reveal, okay.
So that one I just kept close, I was not going to, reveal that at all. But I didn't know enough. I mean, I knew a little bit because thank goodness through my kids, I would always watch Clone Wars and Rebels. So I had to really go back. And then I knew by the time that Thrawn was going to be really officially part of the universe, thank goodness I read the Timothy Zahn books.
Yeah.
Timothy Zahn, right? I love it. And so that really helped me understand and have an idea of how the universe completely was going to be somewhat shaped. And then of course I could lean in on Dave and ask him all kinds of questions. And I think early on I knew Ezra was going to be important. I knew somehow that Ezra was going to be very, very important in this whole thing. So as well, but I didn't know how. So.
See, you're a good secret keeper.
I try.
Ivana, again, I think nothing reflects the fact that these are not Sith, that Baylan and Shin have a peaceful goodbye. Because usually Sith don't say goodbye in a nice way to each other. Do you think, how much, obviously she has her own sort of goals and she's very forthright, but does she have any regrets, you think, but they couldn't sort of stay on the same wavelength more, her and Baylan, as he kind of goes off on his own journey?
It's a difficult question to answer because I think we will really know regarding her regrets and thought patterns in the future if we get the chance to tell that story. But personally, of course, I think if anything, she is learning maybe the heartbreak for the first time of being left alone because Baylan is her family and working for him and working with him, getting to know his world is the only admiration and love she's ever known. So of course, I think there's a lot of turmoil, and she's within the storyline. Even in the first season, we see her break down kind of more and more. But I think in order to create a better future for herself, whatever that might be, and whatever that might look like.
And the way we leave up, the finale was so interesting, and sort of the way things, where the characters were left off. Natasha, I'm curious, she had this goal, Sabine, she would do anything to get Ezra home. And she succeeded in that goal, probably not exactly how she thought it was going to succeed. Ahsoka tells Sabine that they're kind of exactly where they need to be. Is that something you think Sabine can kind of accept? Or is this a sort of tricky situation for her as far as accomplishing something, but ...
Gosh, on a personal level, I don't know how she could accept that. I don't know. I think Sabine probably feels bad about how blind she was, but then again, above all, she trusts her master. She trusts Ahsoka, and if Ahsoka says that they're exactly where they're meant to be, then she's brought some peace by that, I think. Yeah, whether she agrees with that, I don't know. She probably still feels a bit guilty.
Right.
I hope she does.
A little bit, sure. Iman, we get some idea of what Ezra's been up to. He certainly has a cool group of friends that help him out. But how much have you, whether you've discussed it or not, how much have you thought about sort of what his life was like out there during all that time, and the chainmail and all these little things, signs of what happened to him?
Say nothing else about the chainmail. Say nothing about that. But it's one of those things, so like as an actor approaching a role when you're questioning like, okay, so this is where they find me. So then as I arrive here, what was I up to? Like what was I really doing? And some of that is answered in the sense that I joined this nomadic tribe of the Noti, and they give me that cool pod. And but interestingly enough, just as a parallel, I had been in like a very meditative, sort of isolated space myself for the like the 6 months prior to a few months of learning about Ezra. And so I was having like this very like almost alone on an island experience in my real life, and just like meditating, grounding, all that stuff. And then I come into this character and they're like, yeah, you've been stranded on this planet with this peaceful nomadic tribe, and I'm like, well, that just sounds like me hanging with my homies, you know what I mean? Like, I think I've been doing that, you know, I can relate to that pretty easily. So I didn't...
And the theories about what you and the Noti were getting up to on your own, which was hilarious.
Just hanging.
We would like make jokes that they would have like a show every week where they would like force him to do the Force, and they'd be like, Ezra!
I'd be like carrying a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, great.
My friends had a theory that I was around fire with like rapping with them.
I was gonna say musical theater.
Concerts with the Noti, like you guys are gonna listen to this. They don't even know what I'm saying. They're like, hey, it's all good. So maybe those.
That's so Ezra. There you go. Diana, we sadly said goodbye to Morgan. But look, there's some weird stuff going on here. The witches, Dead Rising. Should we count her out for good? Do you think?
I have no idea. I have no idea. So we'll just, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But it was quite a moment, wasn't it?
It was. Were you forewarned about your death, or did you find out?
Say that again?
Were you warned about your death ahead of time, or did you see it in the script?
No, to me, it's just part of the storytelling process, you know? And so I knew early on that this was going to be the process, you know, and I was fine with it. One thing I did want is that her weapon would be used against her. That I made a request, and they worked that in. So the Talisman Blade would be part of the process of her last breath.
You guys kind of referenced earlier, Ivana and Natasha, that the sort of the duels you guys had, and it was this nice sort of runner through the season. Was that fun for you guys? And was this just like pure animosity? Was there any, feeling like, this person, could actually take me, or what was going on with the two characters?
I mean, so much left unsaid here. I think Shin and Sabine, as the fans have reacted to the, shall I call it chemistry?
It's a good word. It's a good word.
Yeah, we felt it filming. We were like, these characters have this crazy magnetic connection to each other, and sometimes, not in the best way. But it was really special, and we felt it on set, and it was just something that, like, Dave, I don't even think he's aware of what he's created.
No, he was aware. I think he was aware on set. He would just look at us and go, we're like, Dave,